In today's episode, Gino Auriemma wins another title. Alexander Ovechkin breaks Wayne Gretzky's record, and the Lakers pound the Thunder. But we begin today with tonight's national championship game between Florida and Houston, two number one seeds. Florida got there by beating SEC rival Auburn. Houston got there with an historic comeback against Duke. Wilbon, is this a matchup you expected to see, and to which team are you giving the edge?
Tony, no, I didn't expect to see this matchup. I think in my pool I had Houston beating Michigan State, if I remember correctly. I've been out for a little while now. So, you know, I was okay with one team getting there. I had Houston getting there. You know, I did not necessarily, even though everybody else seemed to have Florida because they're a number one seed, I did not have Florida. But let me just say, the player I may be most impressed with is Clayton Jr. I mean, this kid on Florida, he is something else to watch, and I can't wait to watch him at the next level. So, Tony, you know, Houston, I'm going to go with them because they're just so there's something that is so impressive about will. And I know everybody else goes crazy over skill, and I appreciate it. I mean, a kid like Clayton Jr. has skill, but I'm going to take will. And Kelvin Sampson seems to have found a way to instill that in a lot of his teams, and particularly this Houston team. Because I know people can say Duke choked. They can. You can make that case. But I thought that Houston walked them down. And they pressed and they pressed and they pressed until Duke just sort of unraveled with a bunch of freshmen while Houston had experienced players. So I'm going to stick with Houston because of that. And I'm light on the Duke choke thing. We could go into Cooper Flag and we could do a whole segment on that. We won't because we're looking ahead. But I'm gonna go with Houston.
I'm going to get that. I'm going to look back before I look ahead. First of all, again and again and again, all credit to Jay Billis. He had both these teams in the finals before the whole thing started. So that's great. I expected a different team. I expected Duke. Mike, I expected Duke when they were up by 14 with 8 minutes left. And I expected Duke when they were up by 9 with 2 minutes left. And I expected Duke when they were up by 6 with 30 seconds left. And it is a gag. I'm looking for another word. I don't have another word. That was a gag. Now, I get it about Houston. They're a hard-working veteran team. They play great defense. They do that. And Duke has a team of freshmen. They are not upperclassmen. All right, and Houston, they work hard, and they had grind-them-out games all season long, which they won. And Duke had a whole bunch of games which they won by 20 and 25. But I still think it was a gag. I hate to use the word, but I think it was a gag, sort of like Arkansas against Texas Tech. Mike, they couldn't inbound the ball. They couldn't inbound the ball when they had to do that. That was terrible. Now, I think you got to be crazy to pick against Houston. I am going to pick against Houston. I'm going to pick Florida for a pretty simple reason. Florida in this tournament has had a bunch of games where they were losing and appeared out of it. And they won those games. So they don't gag. They're talented, they're deep, and they don't gag. And I mean, and Walter Clayton Jr., that's his name, right?
Robert Clayton.
He's the only guy, Mike, since Larry Bird. It's 46 years. A guy goes 30 or more in a regional final and the national semifinal. Sadly for me, picking Florida, the final that year was Magic against Bird, and that was not a close game.
That's right.
That was not a close game. Let's move on. Let's go to the women's championship game from yesterday. Yukon destroyed the defending national champion South Carolina, who had laid in wait for this game for months. Yukon led by as many as 32. Gino Auriemma is now 12-1 in national championship games. Wilbon, what did you make of what the Huskies did and how they did it?
The better team played up to their standard, up to their level of talent and coaching and all their resources. They did. And sometimes you just see, it doesn't take you the whole game. You go, uh-oh, there's the better team. And that was apparent with Yukon. And Tony, you and I talked about this on your podcast this morning. Yukon appears to, we know they have at least two overall number one picks, because Paige Beckers is going to be the number one pick in a week, all right? And Sarah Strong, who's only a freshman, however long she's at Yukon, if she's healthy and plays, she looks like an absolute lock for a number one pick in a couple of years, whatever that is. And AZ Fudd, local to us in Washington, D.C., here to you and me,
Yeah.
And you watched your mom play. That was tremendous. You had some history there that I didn't know.
Yep.
Tony, AZ Fudd played great in the Final Four. She played great in this tournament, coming off her own serious knee injury, just like Paige Beckers had, and she could be an overall number one. And in South Carolina, this edition didn't have that kind of, they don't have a lottery pick apparently. When you talk to people who study the draft and study the league and study college basketball, they don't even have a lottery pick. So when you have that kind of lopsided talent disparity, in this one case, South Carolina's had overall number ones and all that stuff too, just not on this edition. And you have the coach, the Yukon had, ding, 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 Yukon. They played up to it all.
Yeah. It was a non-game. Yukon was better in every facet of the game. Looking back, it's hard for me to believe that Yukon was a number 2 seed.
Yeah.
Because here's what they did. They beat 3 number 1s in a row. They beat Southern California, they beat UCLA, they beat South Carolina. Just in the Final Four, they demolished the overall number 1 seed UCLA by 34 points. Then they demolished the defending champion South Carolina. It was only by 23, but as I said, at one point they led by 32. In the 6 games Yukon played in this tournament, they won by an average of 33 points. This is the national championship tournament. They went through it like it was Drano. All right? I mean, they were that good. You know, Mike, I'll say this. At the end of that game, when Gino was hugging the kids as he went down the line, and he had tears in his eyes, I thought he might quit. I thought he might say, okay, I'm done. You know, he might say, now I know that Fudd is coming back, and I know Strong is coming back, and Gino will probably come back. But maybe he pulls an Elway. Maybe the middle of this week he says, I'm 12-1 in these things. There's me and John Wooden. I'm out. I'm done.
Elway did too. So maybe Gino's looking for that. And by the way, Dawn Staley had the best word for this. She called it masterful. She called what UConn did to her team masterful, and that's it. That's the mic drop word because it was masterful. It was. And now, to the NHL's new all-time leader in goals scored, Alexander Ovechkin. The Capital star set the record Sunday with a wrist shot from his bread and butter spot at the top of the left circle. He was then celebrated on the ice by the man whose record he broke, Wayne Gretzky, the great one. Ovechkin called the whole thing something crazy. Tone, you watched and you watched and you watched and you consumed it in full.
Yes.
What would you call it?
Yes. I would call it stunning because, Mike, I never expected Wayne Gretzky to be caught and passed with that record. Never. I never expected that. And I certainly would never expect him to be caught by Alexander Ovechkin in the same number of games that it took Gretzky to get all those goals. Mike,